This is an audio commentary on my 8-minute 43-second Engineer Guardian 4 run from last patch. You can see here this was world record. This is technically still the fastest run that's been done so far. I'm going to do a walkthrough of my recorded run so I can kind of explain different decisions I make and how you might want to kind of approach this run if you were me playing this. I did this a little while ago, so I'm going to misremember some things, but I'll do my best for this. You only have to use Summons Engineer if you're trying to go for overall world record. Let me show that real quick, actually. So you can see here, Engineer, Ranger, Commando, and then if I go back to other patches, you see some diversity still between the runs, but the fastest runs, I believe, up since Arsenal, all are with Summons Engineer. So if you are going for the overall world record, you're going to have to use Summons Engi. Up until this last patch, Ranger could kind of compete if you grind it out to get CD. I didn't, which is why this Ranger run is so much slower than my Engineer run. But you could get similar times with Ranger to Summons Engi. However, Ranger got nerfed this last patch, so Summons Engi is just going to be the king for speedrunning now. There are filters for other classes, so like if you like a specific class, like for me, I much prefer Commando. So I have run, specifically on Standard, I've run Commando like every patch since I think Arsenal. So I recommend going with whatever class you enjoy the most, but if you are trying to get overall world record, you will have to use Summons Engi. So you'll see here at the start that I reset. That's because I'm looking for one of a few different weapons to try and do this with. I was looking for a decent explosive weapon to rocket jump early on. Specifically, I prefer the Volcano Rifle. However, Comet Cannon's not too bad, does decent damage, and you can rocket jump with it pretty consistently. So that's why I start with it here. The reason I didn't take the Beluga in the first chest is because you can't really get burn on the Beluga, and so it is just a worse weapon than a lot of the other explosives to take early on. I believe what I was doing at this time was that if I did not get a summon in the first room or in Quarry's starting room, I was still running through Quarry up until the boss room, which meant that I wanted a weapon I can get burn on for that. So you'll see here, I get Chromatic Buddies first, and a Kangaroo Sentry from the Smithing Joe. These two together are pretty much what got this run to be as fast as it is. Also, it's very helpful that this is a green Kangaroo Sentry and not a blue one. A gray one would work too. Just that it's not blue is ideal, because a lot of times when you get blues from Smithing Joe, they don't have any green affixes, which means that while I could get turbo on it, I couldn't get loaded, which is part of what makes the Kangaroo Sentry so good. So you see here, I take this, I'm gonna upgrade it to blue with the slug, and I'm gonna roll for loaded turbo on it. I believe I dropped Buddy Bot for this Kaboom grenade here because Kaboom is extra mobbing, which is just very useful up until I get the upgrade to Chromatic Buddies. The upgrade to Chromatic Buddies, which does reflect damage, is part of what makes Summons Engi so strong. It's not the only thing, but like it makes the mobbing go through the roof. You can pretty much just drop like 1 or 2 summons in a room, and the reflect damage will just clear out the entire room for you. But because I'm not going to be able to get that until like the first third of Quarry is done, that's why I take the Kaboom Grenade here. Also just because it lets me do some extra mobbing in other rooms in Quarry while the summons are on cooldown. So you can see here I'm re-rolling for loaded turbo. I don't know how long this takes, so we're going to fast forward past that. Here. So you can see here I'm doing kind of a mix of Kaboom throws and dropping turrets. It's a little messier than it had to be. I could have just dropped 2 turrets, honestly, and moved forwards. Some of the execution when I get summons early on is always a little scuffed, just because I'm rarely expecting to actually get a summon that fast. So Quarry starting room, I can also get a summon here if I get lucky. That's kind of the ideal scenario, is you get 1 summon in Quarry starting room and in the Canyon's middle room. And you'd ideally want 2 Kangaroo Sentries. The odds of it happening are incredibly low, but that's kind of your ideal scenario. So I'm going to probably be upgrading the Kangaroo Sentry more than I do this Kaboom Grenade if I take the Kaboom Grenade too much further into the run. I don't exactly remember when I get my second summon. We'll have to see. So you're going to see I try to drop sentries in rooms and then leave if I'm going to go back to those rooms. That's because the summons can be clearing out enemies in the room while I'm in these purple rooms and stuff like that. The same thing will happen with the orange room that comes after this. Okay, so I take Jigsaw Box here because there's something special you can do with summons. Because you're not really using them as primary weapons, you're not going to be reloading them pretty much ever. Which means that the forced reload from Jigsaw only comes into play when you want it to. What I mean by that? So what I mean by that is that if you upgrade your summon to purple or gold, you can use Jigsaw Box to reroll the affixes on them without having to spend power cells, which can be useful if you pick up a summon that's like blue with no green affixes or something like that. It can also make it easier to roll for multiple elements and turbo and loaded at the same time, which means that you can get out even more damage if you get corrupt items that increase damage of those elements. So Jigsaw is a really, really useful corrupt item for summons builds. Depending on the luck you get with like items and stuff, it's not always going to matter, but it is a nice little backup thing to take just in case you need to upgrade something's rarity and you don't want to spend power cells to reroll it. So I should be leaving here. Yep, there we go. I had a little bit of a hiccup on that corner, I guess. You can see here, I'm pretty much just dropping the summon and then running. Execution's a little shaky. So here's something you can do with engi because of the drones. And also I dropped the summon just to make it easier. So your drones, as long as you don't go too far from this door and you don't get into this let me start that over. It's a little confusing how I said that. As long as you don't go into this room overly fast. So your drones aren't over here pretty much when you enter the room. And as long as you don't go too far into the room. Those two things are something you have to be careful about. Your drones will stay out in this area and will not teleport to you in the room, which means that you can keep spamming your deploy to heal them as they clear out all of these enemies. If you go too fast, sometimes one or both of them will teleport to you because they're like back here when you make it in. If you go too far into the room, sometimes you'll get far enough that they teleport to you as well, which makes clearing out those enemies go a lot slower. So I got Scrap Snacks there. Scrap Snacks is pretty much your ideal second perk. You want Chromatic Buddies within your first two perks every time. If you can get it first, it's really good because then you get the Pyro Reflect for clearing out this room. If you don't get it first, then it's fine. Not the end of the world unless you're like trying to min-max times a lot. Targeting Protocol is not bad to get second, but it's mostly only going to help with the bossing and for the Goliath. For the actual mobbing, which will be a lot of Aqua Station and a lot of that Quarry room, you want Scrap Snacks, just because the faster fire rate helps the mobbing go a lot quicker. You can see there, I was triggering deploy before I went into this fight. That's because I have Scrap Snacks active now going into the fight, while I still have a full deploy cooldown. Now you'll see it did clear, if I saw that right. It's a little finicky sometimes. It doesn't, the game doesn't really like that you're triggering deploy early like that. Sometimes it works better than others. Sometimes it'll clear instantly. It's just kind of RNG, from what I can tell. This bossing's a little bit slow because I have that forgetting the name, Kaboom Grenade. It's not the best bossing weapon, but 243 and Guardian 4 leaving Quarry is really fast. Summons engi is just absolutely broken. I believe I get a summon here as well. You can see I got a summons cooldown perfume too, or not summon specifically, but like an all-fire perfume. I don't know why I'm looking at bottle cap. I was wrong though, I didn't get a second summon. It should be fine because I have a Kangaroo Sentry, and Kangaroo Sentry has a really fast cooldown, so it'll still even out more or less. I'm still dropping Kabooms just to try and get some extra damage out for the summons to not like play full RNG on if they clear it or not. Under ideal circumstances, you would just drop both your summons, leave the room, and then you'd switch to a second Kangaroo Sentry or Minion Box, and then drop your summons, leave room, switch to your other weapon, and just go back and forth. Since I don't have two summons weapons here, I'm trying to be more careful and not risk the summons missing enemies. So when you're in this room of Aqua Station, you want to be watching this XP bar. You're going to be leaving through Way Station up here at the Vines, but if your XP bar does not say C rank for XP, then you'll end up with an A rank when you leave. So anytime you're clearing out this area right before the exit, you want to just be watching your bar at all times to see when it says C rank. So that's kind of why I'm pathing over here, is because my summons are clearing enemies, and so I can head towards the exit while they're clearing enemies for me. I should probably briefly mention the route we take for the speedrun. I go Quarry to Aqua Station to Way Station. This saves the most time because Way Station skips over Energy Center and Fusion Core, which are just really long levels in general. And then it also skips the boss fight, which also takes a lot of time. And it just takes you straight to Haven. You go Quarry to Aqua Station instead of Quarry to Pit, because Pit's just too long. Even with the extra corrupt items, it adds about 1 minute to 2 minutes to your run. And so while the corrupt items are very strong in normal runs, they don't add enough value most of the time for your speedruns to be worth the extra time that pit costs. And then from Haven, we're going to go to Harmony Square because it lets you leave Haven in like 1 minute or less, whereas Haven would normally take like 2.5 minutes depending on what build you're running. And then Harmony Square itself is also just faster than District. You can be leaving Harmony in about 1.5 minutes if you're running Summons engi, whereas District would take like 2 to 3 minutes. Now, the game plan for Way Station is pretty much the same as Aqua Station. You just leave summons in the room and you dip. For most characters, you'd be trying to intentionally clear the larger enemies before you go to the next room. Summons engi, you have so much clearing power to just leave a summon and dip that it doesn't really make much difference what you target. I do find that it helps a bit if you have a second weapon that's not a summon to be clearing out some enemies as you go, but that's just kind of a given. I am trying to be a little careful here because I had a pretty good run going, so I didn't want to risk my summons not clearing enough enemies in a room. That I am slowing down my pace a little bit to throw some extra kabooms and try and clear out a bit. I have S rank here, which means that I can just leave. My grapple was on cooldown, so I didn't really have a good way to get through that door faster. You'll see I have targeting protocol. I took that over Scrap Pancakes. Scrap Pancakes is really good, and it synergizes really well with Scrap Snacks because you basically have permanent uptime on Scrap Snacks if you get Scrap Pancakes. However, for Haven specifically, because you only have to take out the Goliaths, you need targeting protocol if you're running summons engi. Otherwise, your summons will kind of just play full RNG on if they target the Goliath or if they target the smaller enemies, and you end up losing a lot of time in Haven by not having targeting protocol. So you'll see here in a second, I'm going to drop 2 summons. I do have to take out that shield, unfortunately, which means that I don't have my targeting protocol at first. As soon as I get targeting protocol on him, they melt the Goliath. But they weren't really targeting him until I marked him. So that's something you want to be careful of. You want to have your secondary ability ready whenever you're entering these rooms so you can mark the Goliath as soon as possible. Pathing around Haven does tend to be a lot slower on summons engi, since it's if you have double summons, you don't have a reliable rocket jump outside of your secondary, which does have a fairly long cooldown to it, so you will lose a lot of time in Haven compared to other classes. I find that normally I leave Haven with summons engi around 1 minute. Some of the faster times I've gotten like 50 seconds, I think, with it, which is a lot slower than other classes, because like a Ranger, for example, I could leave at like 45 seconds or 40 seconds. So that is the one downside of Summon's engi, is that your Havens tend to be a little slower. I think I was looking at that minion box over this one because I can reroll the other one for free. I don't remember which one I go with. So the trick I mentioned earlier, using Jigsaw to reroll, doesn't work on minion boxes since they don't have a reload. So that's why I'm so conflicted here, is I'm not sure which one I want to go for. Okay, so I got the free one. I think I decided that because it has turbo, it's fine. Turbo loaded would be better, but because it's a minion box, it's already like, why am I rerolling? Oh, I'm going for leader on the kangaroo. So, this was an oversight. I was thinking about Jigsaw because of the minion boxes, and I was like, oh, I can reroll for loaded turbo leader on my kangaroo sentry. I could have been rerolling for free, and I do realize this, I believe. Yeah, this was just a big waste of time. Like a lot of wasted time. Um, so don't do what I did there. That was dumb. For the harmony rooms, you want to be very careful and make sure that like the enemies are either all dead or almost all dead before you leave to the next room. I have had runs where I leave my summons in the room, go to the next room, and then when the door closes, it deletes the summons while leaving the enemies alive. And that can cost you the S rank for XP. It's like full RNG from what I can tell. I can't figure out if it's based off position or what. It just seems that when the door closes, sometimes your summons will just be gone. So I recommend waiting and clearing out all the guys in the room before you leave, because realistically, it's only going to cost you like an extra second or two. And it's better to have that guarantee that you're not losing out on the S rank XP, especially if you have a good run going for time. That said, I believe I did leave an extra kangaroo in that room, and I didn't have to. So just be careful of when you're dropping your summons as you leave. There's not really much to say about Harmony itself. You're pretty much just letting the summons do all the work at this point. Even trying to mob with the... like, if you have another weapon at this point, then you're already losing time off not having two summons. So, it is what it is. I think I get unlucky here. By this point, I hadn't used any rerolls, and I passed Scrap Pancakes, so I had seen every perk once already, which technically means that when I reroll it here, I have full odds that Scrap Pancakes can appear again, and it just doesn't. So I just get really unlucky and end up going Chromatic Tempest. If I so the reason I don't pick Chromatic Tempest immediately is because I'm trying to see if I can get dice in this room here. Not this room. The room before the boss. I'm trying to see if I can get dice to reroll for Scrap Pancakes, because it's a lot more damage if I get that than it is taking Tempest. Now, I don't ultimately get dice, because as you'll see later in this run, dice is before the Iris boss room, so that sucks. Whatever. I should be heading to the exit right now. I think I was worried that, so sometimes in Harmony, you'll have times where you see my summons are like right here under me, and there's these bushes in the way. I was worried that they wouldn't be able to shoot these guys because of this like setup right here. I think they do ultimately get shot, but I'm not sure if it was by another summon or by the one I dropped. Either way, I was playing it safe. Oh, Kangaroo Sentry. I did not remember that I got that. Okay, cool. Now this is where Jigsaw does actually end up being helpful, is because I'm able to reroll for loaded turbo. Don't know how long that takes. Not actually that long, okay. You'll see as well, I do end up taking Chromatic Tempest here. I gave up on dice, and I figured that 10% would be better. This is where you start to see the absurd damage output of summons. Absolutely melting the boss. And that's still missing a lot of damage items, by the way. I don't have Balloon, I don't have Ocarina, I don't have Egg, I don't have Poppy. If I had Egg or Poppy, I could potentially take Chili Pepper, and I have none of that here, so I'm missing some really, really high impact items. And they still just demolish. So the reason I'm hesitating here to take Strong Arm is because none of these other upgrades really help much. And at the time, we weren't sure if Strong Arm would buff the summons damage or not. I did later test it, and it doesn't. So it's not really worth it to take Strong Arm unless you're actually like shooting the summons weapons. Which is debatable, I think, on if there's really much value in shooting them anyways, because ultimately the damage output will be really low, and you're better off just spamming them off cooldown, I think, but it just depends on how much cooldown you have, I guess. Game plan for Moon Arena is pretty much the same as Harmony. There's not really much that goes to it, aside from just spacing out where you're placing your summons so they can see around cover. And they'll pretty much just clear everything as fast as they spawn. You'll see that I'm trying to stay near the door here as it starts clearing out the enemies. Oh, that's so annoying. I'll talk about this delay in a second. When you're in arena rooms, you want to try to get closer to the exits whenever your summons are starting to clear out like the last little chunk of health. Sometimes you'll have issues in Harmony and Haven with double summons where they clear out the enemies so fast that the final enemy can't spawn quick enough, and you'll just wind up sitting around for a second waiting for it. Not really anything that you can do about that as far as I know right now. It's just kind of unfortunate when it happens. You see I'm rocket jumping through the halls here. That does just save a little bit of time of running. Rocket jumping in general will save a lot of time during a run, but for summons engi, it's not as much as it is for other classes, since you tend to end up with double summons. So you're not able to rocket jump as readily usually. Let me talk about that actually real quick. So this rocket jump I do here through the door, you want to be very careful where you place that rocket jump. It actually can be a little bit better to do it from further back, or to jump through the barrier and then launch off the barrier. Because an issue that I started having with this rocket jump is the floor here, for whatever reason, would kind of eat the jump. And it wouldn't give me the momentum shooting forwards. It would instead shoot me like up, or it just wouldn't give me any boost at all. So that is something you want to be careful about. I think it's probably safer to be launching off the side of the wall or from further back or something else than it is to try and launch directly through the front of the door like that. The moon doors are the only doors I've had that issue with. No other door has given me that problem. But that is something you might want to be careful about. And of course I get dice here. I should buy these french fries. I don't know if I do or not. French fries are good extra cooldown to maintain scrap snacks. I think I might be debating between french fries and leveling my weapon, actually. I think that's why I didn't buy them. Because I was a few levels under the max. I don't have Mark either here, so I am losing out on a lot of time for both this boss and Uncle Jim, actually. So I'm missing a lot of damage, and it still just absolutely shreds. This tends to be where items make the most difference, I think, is Harmony Rooms, Harmony Boss, and then Iris specifically are where items will make the most difference on a Summons Engi run. There is not a ton of time to make up for movement and stuff with summons, because the summons do pretty much all of the clearing for you. And so really high-end summons runs, I think the times will almost always be dictated by what items you get. However, that's only if you're at like, you know, under 10-minute runs for Guardian 4 or like under 8 minutes runs for standard. So up until like 8 minutes on standard and 10 minutes on Guardian 4, it will still come down more to movement and stuff. And some of it'll be the summons you get. Like if you're stuck with like 2 minion boxes or 2 B cannons, or like you only get 1 summon, and you're stuck with a weapon or something, your times will suffer there. So there will be RNG with that. But a lot of a lot of the time you can very consistently get like 10-ish minutes with summons engi, and on Guardian 4, 8 minutes on standard. I found as long as you get like a summon. So if you're not hitting those marks, then you probably want to focus on improving at like movement and using hero cape and stuff like that first before you try and get the RNG. So yeah, Irish gets shredded. Let me talk real quick. I kind of glossed over this because I was talking at a different point. You'll see that the summons don't immediately attack Iris while she's in the ground. So for like the 10-second get up animation, they won't do anything. However, I have so much cooldown between my summons because of the perfume and turbo and rubber tape that I figured it would be better to summon as many as possible to get the initial like burst of damage right at the start. I would only do this if you have like a lot of cooldown going into it. I think otherwise it's better to just wait until she gets up. So that's kind of everything that I can think of off the top of my head reviewing this. If you have any questions about the run that I didn't cover, feel free to ask in the comments here, or join the Roboquest Discord, ask in speedrun discussion. There's a lot of good people there that can help answer stuff if I'm not available. Hopefully this helps if you decide to do a summons engi run. I'll do like a more dedicated speedrun guide for engi and for other classes, doing like a more detailed walkthrough of like routing and items and stuff like that, you know, what you want to take win per quarter and stuff like that. At some other time, it'll be more concise than this thing, but right now this video I figured would be good to get out to just kind of explain the run we use for a world record.